do we get downgraded to Dregs of Wisdom? I thought this was the transformative, existential, top of the hip, top of the hill.
And welcome to Dregs of Wisdom with Andrew Tanner.
Dregs of Wisdom, episode 16, here with the lovely
Wait,
Beryl Bender.
how do we get downgraded to Dregs of Wisdom? I thought this was the transformative, existential, top of the hip, top of the hill.
No, the Tao goes where all others disdain. Like water, it falls into the mud and through the cracks.
Okay, Dregs of Wisdom it is.
Dregs of Wisdom. So you've got some dregs of wisdom. I said you've been teaching since not 1980, since 19 when?
Teaching yoga since 1974.
1974.
Started practicing in 71. Took a crash course and started teaching what I learned in 74 in Colorado.
Dang. So I was literally talking to Scott before the this, and I was like, yeah, she's amazing. She's been teaching for 4 decades. She's like in her 70s. She's just in her 70s. And I'm like, no, you're in your.
Oh God, do we have to lead off with that? Yeah, 81.
Fuck it, hey, you look amazing. So you should own it.
Thank you very much. 81 is right. Me and Joanna Macy, and I think there are a few others that are.
You at 81 look like damn good. It's hard to believe that if you said I'm 71, I'd be like, wow, she looks good.
She looks good. I'm grateful. I owe it all to yoga.
Yeah, and that's what you're
plant-based eating.
And plant-based eating. That's kind of your focus now, is longevity.
Yeah, thank you for saying that, because I'm sort of been credited gratefully with introducing the idea of yoga and longevity, because about 4 years ago, I did this course for Yoga International called Yoga and Longevity. But, the idea of yoga and longevity has been around for thousands of years. But when I looked at Dan Buettner's book, The Blue Zones, and the list of commonalities they came up with that are found in all 5 of the blue zones. And for any of our listeners or watchers that don't know, the blue zones are these pockets of longevity around the world where a significant percentage of the population lives to be over 100.
And it's like Osaka, Japan, or something. There's
Okinawa.
Sorry. What are the other?
Nosara, Costa Rica.
Ooh, yeah.
Loma Linda, California. Oh. Sardinia,
right? That's the one.
And Ikaria, Greece.
Ooh.
And what they found, as they interviewed just the most delightful centenarians in all of these zones, was a kind of a list of things that were common to all of the pockets.
Right.
And when I looked at that list of 9 things, I went, well, they're talking about the yoga lifestyle. Move, natural movement, get outside, be able to downregulate, mind-body connection,
community,
right. Plant-based eating. And I went, yes, let's, and so it just hit me like, let's do something on yoga and longevity. And now it's a, really hot topic. A lot of people talking about longevity because we're all getting older. All of a sudden we think, I'm going to push this.
I was like, do you have in mind, like, I'm going to live to X years?
I hate to say that, but I sort of do. I mean, I sort of thought, live to be 100. Yeah, that's a goal.
Is it? Is that the number?
You want to be, how about 108?
Fuck yeah. I mean, what's weird is when I was a kid, I used to always say to myself, I'm going to live to 103. I've said that since I was a little kid. And I don't know, now it's like, I wish I could go longer than that. But like.
Well, you must have been Taoist in your last lifetime.
Why?
There was a Taoist teacher that I met at Omega. I've been teaching on Omega faculty this is going to be my 41st year this summer of teaching. And what was Tek Young Lin? He was a Taoist, and he used to say that his parents taught all their children, all the Taoist kids learn not only their birth date, but their death date. And their death date was 120 years and 3 days after their birth date. because you didn't want to
Whoa.
die on your birthday because you were going to have a big party and gather all your friends, and then
You go
you would
3 days later.
yeah, and then you would tell your friends, okay, in 3 days I'm out of here.
That's fascinating. I can't believe I didn't know that. I'm like big in, I don't know if you know about my background is in when I was in from age 19 to basically 25, I studied Samje Taoism. I was in like a Korean little mini Taoist high demand spiritual group, I call it. That's a nice name for a cult.
Well, you refer to that a lot, your
Yeah, okay.
Taoist background and
But I
your.
never knew that one of that about the Death Day thing.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, I love that. Thank you.
Whether or not it's true, I can't testify to that. But
No, that's
Tech
okay.
Young Lin said it was true.
All right, I'm gonna check it out after this.
He was a great, great teacher.
You must have so many stories.
Oh,
I I wanted to ask you questions that maybe no one's ever asked before.
well, we'll get to that in a second, but I have to tell you what happens when you talk about my stories.
Okay.
Is it brings up this ferocious sense of guilt.
Really?
Because I feel I've talked, not much, but a little bit to a few people about writing my next book. And I have been assiduously avoiding getting started on it because it's a big project. It would be
like a memoir.
Like a memoir.
Yeah.
Now, my first 4 books, I kind of had outlines for. It was pretty, they were
Power Yoga.
Power Yoga was the
Yoga.
primary series. Yeah. Beyond Power Yoga was the 8-limb path. Boomer Yoga was just a, kind of a jiggling of power, making it more adaptable to people as we're getting older.
Yeah.
And then Warrior Yoga was, Yoga for Warriors was fabulous, so much fun. I wrote that for the military and for veterans.
Right.
But still, there was a kind of built-in outline. Now it's like, oh my God, where do I start? How do I? But every time I am in a workshop or something and I tell a story, people go, oh my God, you have to write your book. I go, oh, geez. So I need accountability partners.
Well, maybe you should just do a ton of podcasts and just tell all the stories and then get all the recordings. And then there's probably themes we'll find in them.
That's a great idea. And I've thought of that too, but I have such a smattering of.
Like I'll ask. So one of the questions I want to ask you was, I see you must still have dogs because I can see the dog hair on your
I was
shirt.
outside
your
office doing this going, oh my God, I can't watch. They won't see it on camera.
No, they won't. So tell us about what people need to know. Like you are an animal activist, animal lover, and you used to race husky dog sleds.
Right.
Tell us what happens with dog sledding and huskies. What's there? I
was simultaneously a member of PETA. I was like a charter member of PETA. I remember when Alex Pacheco and Ingrid Newkirk, what was her name? Yeah, were handing flyers out of the back of their station wagon in Los Angeles in 1971. And they were saying, yeah, eat plants and be kind to animals. And so I was a member of PETA, and apologies for some of the crazy things that some PETA members have done over the decades that are totally inappropriate. But PETA has, the good things they've done is make people more aware of animal suffering.
Right.
And I was a member of the New England Sled Dog Club.
And were those two at odds? Were you not supposed to be?
Totally. When I was, my point in racing Siberians and then training them and running them was because they still needed to run. They still needed exercise.
If you have a Siberian Husky living in New York City, it's like suffering for them.
I know.
Right?
Yeah.
They need to run. They need to.
So I got the truck and the sled and the ATV and the trailer and the dog box. And then I had a mentor who taught me how to hook up the dogs and run. It's an amazing
What is that
activity.
like? I mean, how fast do you go?
20, 25 miles an hour.
But still, with no things around you in the open.
Your feet are on the runners and you're holding on to the bar here.
Does it feel fast?
Yes.
Yeah.
And the first race I ever was in, was it in?
Oh, and you raced.
Oh yeah, New England Sled Dog Club. We had races while it was still cold. when we still had
back
cold
when New
weather.
England was cold.
And the first race was that we had races in Malone, New York, which is way up near the Canadian border. There were a couple in New Hampshire, Burke Mountain, Vermont. I don't remember where the first one was, but we went out on a lake, and then the trail cut into the woods, and there was a trail through the woods, and I was running a 4-dog team, and so that's about 5 miles, which is perfect. The dogs loved it. But there are people watching, and there are about 400 dogs there, and all the mushers are there with their teams and their sleds, and everybody helps everybody hook up their dogs and go to the starting line. And the dogs are going.
Do you have to whip the dogs?
Oh,
you can say fuck. It's okay.
Fuck no.
Fuck no. Okay.
The dogs are all going like this, banging against their harnesses.
They just are like,
oh yeah. So you have your buddies, the guys that are racing before or after you, help you take your team up to the starting line. And then that particular race, they had National Guard volunteers holding the teams for the racers.
The dogs wouldn't run off.
So the dogs wouldn't run off. So you're standing on the sled, right? You're waiting, and I'm starting to get nervous just remembering this. And
3, 2, it's like Mario Kart.
Exactly.
3, 2, 1. Boom.
Racers ready, 15 seconds, and then they count you down from 15 seconds.
Oh,
and
15. Dang, that seems to me, I would rather it was just 3, 2, 1. 15.
I know, 15.
Seems like
right?
the anxiety was just, you could have all these thoughts.
And I'd never been on a sled before, right? All of these mushers that were racing, they all have, I don't know where they live, Alaska, and they train, right?
So you literally did it without training?
I figure, how hard can this be? I'm a skier. When you go this way, you do that. When you go this way, you do that.
Oh my God. Did this end well?
Well, didn't start well. It ended okay.
Tell us more.
Okay, so they count you down, right? And then everybody lets go. And the dogs just take off. And there are no fences or anything. They're just there's little, pine boughs laying out the trail. Yeah. And if they see a squirrel in the woods, and your lead dogs aren't well trained, they'll take the whole team into the forest. Oh my God. So my dogs, I had 2 really good lead dogs. One was, I got them both as puppies, but I had adopted a number of retired lead dogs I had a big fenced-in yard when I lived on Long Island, and my older dogs would teach the puppies how to follow, how to lead.
Wow.
So Hopi and Nellie are out in front, right? I'm on the sled. Everybody lets go, and off we go. I have one blind dog at wheel. That's Mo, and you got to watch out for him.
You had a blind dog?
I had a blind dog.
Mo.
Mo, you had to make sure Mo didn't stick his head out and run into a tree. And Cheatin was the other wheel dog. So they take out across the lake, make this little turn, and then there's a turn to go into the woods. The turn happens, the dogs take the turn, the sled takes the turn, and I just go over the front of the sled and flying through the air into the snowbank.
Oh my God.
And the dogs keep going. Nothing stops.
They're like, we'll see you later. See you, Beryl.
So
see you, boss.
There are course marshals that stop the team, grab the dogs and stop. And then I'm running down.
Okay?
I was okay. I'm running.
How far do you think you were thrown?
I don't know, 10 feet, not, wasn't like a projectile, although it kind of felt that way. Wow. And I'm running down the trail, catching up with my sled, jump on the sled, my heart's pounding. And the rest of the race went really well. It was really nice. It's quiet. The dogs aren't barking anymore.
How old were you when you did that? Do you remember what year it was?
Probably, I don't know, maybe I was in my late 50s or early 60s.
Right. So that just shows the kind of person you are. Like, okay, late 50s, early 60s. You know what I haven't tried before?
Hang gliding.
Yeah, dog racing. And without any practice or anything, I'll just enter a race.
No, I had a lot of my dogs were trained. I used to go out 4 days a week with my mentor to the Pine Barrens or whatever it
Yeah,
was
the dogs
called.
were trained, but you were just like,
No,
I'm cool.
I just figured I had this. That was kind of like it was kind of like pickleball last summer.
Okay.
I'm going, pickleball. How hard can this be? It's a bunch of old people hitting the ball back and forth. First time I'm diving for a ball, fell on my ass, fractured my pelvis. Last September and October, I was in a wheelchair for 2 months with a
A lot
fractured.
of people your age who fracture their pelvis, that's the end.
That's all my friends were writing to me. Oh my God, Beryl.
You
Everybody.
look like nothing. I never would believe you had a fractured pelvis.
I'm so lucky. I mean, it healed up 100%.
What is the mindset that or the mantra, the thoughts that you had when you experienced this injury? What was going through your mind about how you were going to heal yourself, or were you going to? I'm curious. What was going through your mind at that time?
I couldn't stand up and I couldn't walk. And one of the guys who was playing with us said, "Oh, just take her to you have a massage in at 2 this afternoon? Or just go see your massage therapist. She'll fix you right up." My woman friend who was playing with me, she said, "I'm taking you to the emergency room." But I couldn't stand up. So they helped me get up and put me on a bench, and they finished the game. And then she said, "Oh, I know. Okay, now we can go to the ER." And I wasn't really thinking, I just
You
thought,
didn't have any like, oh my God, this could be
no,
serious.
I just thought, no, I did something serious.
But once they told
'Cause
you you fractured your pelvis, was there any like, were you determined to just heal yourself and be back to where you are? What?
I didn't really think about that. I was in the hospital for 5 days. I was lucky because I came into the hospital as an outpatient, and they transferred me to being an inpatient because my blood pressure spiked because of the injury.
Oh,
And so they couldn't let me out until the blood pressure came down. I was actually I forget what it's called. I was in a crisis for a few days. They had me on 3 kinds of blood pressure medication, and
because your heart is working so
I
hard to.
guess so. I don't know. The minute I was there for 5 days, and I went into rehab for a week, and I did not want to go to rehab. And some of my friends, um, who kind of took charge of the situation, said, "Beryl, your house isn't set up. You can't wait there for 6 to 8 weeks. That means you need a wheelchair. That means we need to set up your house." And so I was overruled. And they just said, "Oh, you're going to rehab." I went to a great spot. I was really lucky. And but what I think made the huge difference was that I didn't eat any of the food.
Any of the hospital
Any
food?
of the hospital food. And
Why? What
I
was it
was
like? It looks
lecturing
like,
the
yeah, the
administrator who came
shittiest
down.
food,
She
right?
said, "What would you like to eat?" And I said, "Really? Do you really want to know?"
Yeah.
I said, "Well, I don't want to have any salt. I can't have any dairy. I can't have any meat or fish. I'd like fresh vegetables and beet juice and,
They're like, here's an
green
apple.
juices." So my friends, a number of them, just showed up every day. I know
With healthy foods.
Dina Bancroft, my friend from Lenox, brought me jugs of
Lentil
fresh
soup.
fresh juice every day. She brought me beet juice,
Wow.
which kind of improves the ability of your.
Can I ask, like, I mean, you tell me if a question is too personal, but
Okay.
like, you're 81. You've been vegan for how many years?
I was vegetarian since 1971.
Okay.
And I ate a lot of cheese, had a lot of half and half in my coffee. And
What about eggs?
yeah, I ate eggs too.
Yeah. And when did you give those up at some
About
point?
4 or 5 years ago, I became vegan. I became vegetarian for ethical reasons.
Right.
I became vegan for health reasons
Really?
because I was still having high blood pressure issues. And I went, okay, I have probably sufficiently clogged up my arteries with cheese and and
Huh.
all the, and
So I just want to put a pin in that because I'm really curious about this discussion. As you know, in the yoga world, like vegan diet, it's, I wouldn't say controversial, but it's a topic that comes up a lot. When I studied with as a Taoist, there was no concept of that. But when I studied with Dharma Mitra for 5 years, it was like hardcore important to be vegan, from a spiritual perspective, not from a, he wasn't an activist, so to speak, not like PETA activism, but, and I then, I've been doing this for over 20 years. So I have, 5 years as a monk, and then 5 years as a high demand spiritual group, whatever you want to call it, 5 years with Dharma Mitra, where I was vegan. And then actually when I came to Kripalu, that I stopped being a vegan because there was all these healthy local farmers that would give me eggs and give me, their dairy, like non, so I stopped being a vegan suddenly. And when I kind of left being a yogi full time and became more of like a business guy in the yoga world, I basically went back to being freegan. And it's only recently, as of last year, I've been, the thought of being vegan or vegetarian again is, it keeps like poking. It's like a little worm that won't go away in my brain. So one thing I want to ask you is like, give me your best, why should I do it? Why should we, and I'm curious about vegetarian for ethical reasons, vegan for health reasons. Do you think vegan is the right health diet for everyone, or was that just for you?
My teacher, my guru, Moni Sri Chitrabhanu, was a Jain monk who I met in 1971 in California. He was the first Jain ever to leave India. He came to the United States at the invitation of Harvard Divinity School and participated in that Council of All Religions or whatever.
Yeah.
And Jains are all vegetarian for ethical reasons, right? They don't kill animals.
Right.
So that was why I became it, and it just happened. I didn't try to become vegetarian. I remember going to this butcher in LA. I was living in California, and I had a little bit of money, which was a novelty, and I bought this steak and I got it home and cooked it. It just smelled like rotten meat, and maybe it was bad or spoiled or aged too long, but I went, that's it. I can't do this anymore. And that was it. Now, in the 80s or 90s, I guess, once my first book came out and I started traveling, I remember I had a couple burgers in Carlisle, Pennsylvania. I had a steak in Livingston, Montana. I had salmon in Vancouver, except for a few little transgressions, I was pretty seriously vegan. I know what you mean about the local farms. I buy my dogs their meat and their food from local farms where I can, talk to the farmers. I asked this one farmer at a farmer's market once. I said, well, and I didn't want to sound like some asshole, saying, excuse me, but where do you get your eggs? I said, well, what's the deal here? You raise your own cattle. That's cool. And, how do you kill them? You go to a slaughterhouse or something? Or He goes, nope. He says, kill them right here on the farm. They're happy one minute and dead the next.
Oof, what do you think of that?
And I went, well, that's, my dogs have to have something to eat. So that was, but here's the bottom line for me.
Interesting.
In Buddhism, the 5 precepts, one of them is do no harm. Don't kill anything.
Same in yoga, ahimsa.
Same in ahimsa, one of the 5 yamas. Non-harming, thou shalt not kill is one of the 10 commandments. How much clearer do we need to have it made that we are not really, there's a new movie out called Christspiracy, which is mind-blowing.
Christspiracy?
It's by the same filmmakers that did Cowspiracy and Seaspiracy. I've shown these films dozens of times at workshops and retreats. And if you see Seaspiracy, you'll never eat fish again.
Really?
When you learn the ins and outs of the fishing industry. But how the Christspiracy movie starts with a young man going to the filmmaker who was giving a lecture and saying, well, what is there a spiritual way to kill an animal? And then he said, well, let me put it this way. How would Jesus kill an animal? And that starts the filmmaker on this 7-year quest. And they go all the way back to the temples. They've got archaeologists that are scraping the sides of the drains that came out of the temples where all the blood flowed out from the animal sacrifice. And I've been on this rant
What's
about
the
Christ.
do you
The
think
end
Christ was a vegan or vegetarian?
Absolutely. And I
Really?
think Buddha was too. Yeah.
Well, Buddha, I think there's pretty documented that he was, because he came out of India and out of a tradition where it seems that in Buddha's story, and I could be butchering this, so Wikipedia this and challenge me on this, but I thought that after he went on his journey for an awakening, he spent time studying with yogis,
Yes.
like actual hatha yogis and other, shramanas in the woods that would have been vegetarian. I don't know about vegan. And India has a whole kind of history of revering, not eating cow and whatnot. But Christ is an interesting one, because do you believe that Christ studied in the East?
I do, absolutely. I've read a number. I mean, how do we know, really?
Yeah.
If we look at the Bible, no disrespect to a sacred text, but, it was a bunch of people like you and me sitting around a table drinking wine, writing, well, let's see, how do you remember this, but...
Are you referring to like when it was first written, or more like Council of Nicaea, like over the years as it got edited, you mean?
I don't know enough about it to answer that, really.
I'll help you out. I agree with you. I'll for our listeners, just historically, the Bible, was originally different works that were compiled together.
Right.
And at certain points and the Old Testament has a longer, the Old Testament, which is the books of the Torah, the
Exactly.
Hebrew Bible, those have a longer shelf life of being the same books for a while, but there are lots of different versions. But all the New Testament was edited multiple times over the years. And what we think of as the New Testament, for example, at the Council of Nicaea, there was a group of a bunch of cardinals and people that got together and decided, okay, this is in, this is out, the book of, this prophet, they're not a prophet, we'll take them out. So it's true that these works are edited and decided on by a group of people. And that group of people held a lot of power, as an institution. So getting back, so I agree with you on all that. I'm just contexting it. So your thought, though, on Jesus, has that like an interest of yours, or just something that you kind of believe? It was
something. I'm a fan of documentaries. I mean, there are probably.
By the way, just be careful not to cover your mic.
Oh, sorry. Thanks. There probably aren't any or many documentaries on food or on the environment or on animals that I haven't watched 3 or 4 times and shown to as many people as possible. So I watched Christspiracy. It was released about a month ago, and I went to Northampton, Massachusetts, with a couple friends to watch the release date. Now we're waiting for the opportunity to get a copy of the film or before it starts streaming.
What's the core of it?
The core of it is that Jesus did not go into the temple to throw out the money changers. He went into the temple because it had become a slaughterhouse, and because the priests were making so much money from animal sacrifice. Because if you wanted to ensure a good crop or the birth of a healthy child, or you would go to the priest and bring them your lamb or your goat or whatever and say, would you sacrifice this animal for me and ensure that I have a good crop harvest? And you would pay them money. The priest would then sell the meat. So they were getting double paid for the same.
They weren't sacrificing it; they were
selling the meat, and that's where
I wonder what. I mean, that makes sense.
And so Jesus got killed because he was interfering with the lucrative income of the priests in the temple at that time, and that's their story. That's their story, and they interview historians and scholars and people who translate the original texts. I mean,
I imagine there'd be a lot of. I can't wait to hear the
it's a
pushback on
very
that.
academically, highly notated film that seems. I'm on board. I think there's no question that they've hit on something really profound.
Interesting. My only caveat would be
Because
I'm not. I think that's a great theory. I would just be wary of making a decision just like based on one documentary. Do you know what I mean? That's like. I mean, documentaries are designed to convince us of a certain viewpoint.
absolutely.
He obviously his mission is animal welfare. So I'm not saying it's wrong or this or that. I'm saying I would just I'd be very curious about
Let's
that.
wait
Yeah,
and see.
totally.
I
would
will
like
be
to.
would totally be willing to do that.
I think there'll be.
We'll have another. You watch the
But
film, and
is
we'll
that
have
the
another
reason I should be a
podcast.
vegan? I don't know about that though. What do you think?
I
Well, what I'm also hearing from you though, and we don't have to stand this too long, but it sounds like because there are some people that are like so hardcore about it that they want to feed their dogs or cats vegetarian diet. Do you think that is like somehow missing the point?
Yeah, I do. I think cats are not meant to be vegetarians. I mean, at least that's my understanding.
What about a Siberian Husky?
What Siberian Husky is really not meant to be vegetarian either. I don't think. I mean, yes, I do buy meat for my Siberian Huskies and I feed them. I mean, I make their meals. I don't feed them,
right?
Nasty Alpo and dog kibble, and I give them kale and yams and parsley and carrots and celery and vitamins and probiotics.
Right. But so I think that's like a type of vegetarian that I'm more in alignment with that. It's more of like Taoism is about like just looking at being more in touch with nature. And I find that, and I think maybe this is also true from the Bhagavad Gita, that there would be different diets for different people and types, and depending on their dharma or their purpose.
That makes sense.
And I think maybe the reason I'm feeling more drawn to vegetarianism again is because I feel like my purpose is moving back in a spiritual direction. And just like we wouldn't a dog or a cat, having them eat a vegan or vegetarian diet, it feels like it's out of alignment with nature. And I think some vegans would be really would say, well, but it's still killing, and and you're killing so that you can have a happy dog.
That's really true. It's an ethical dilemma because I think if you were really perfectly vegan, you wouldn't own a dog or a cat that you had to kill an animal
that
to
would
feed
be their
them.
argument.
And I say I couldn't do it, but I've never been faced with starvation. And if you have to ask me again, if I were ever in a position where my dogs were starving or I was starving, maybe I could grab a chicken and,
Yeah, I think that this is going to be controversial, but I think it would be unnatural not to do that. I think that if your veganism or belief, it would have to be so religious that you would cut against your own natural instincts to not be willing to do that in the case of starvation. That being said, I think in a world where we have all this blessing and we're going to have AI, we're going to have robots that do everything. We're going to have
self-driving
cars. We're going to have like all this abundance. I do think that there's a case for more, less, if we can have less violence in the world, I think that would be better, less death.
I like what you brought up about the Bhagavad Gita and what is our dharma. I remember teacher training program that I was running at my home when I still lived out on Long Island, out on the East End, and there was a cardiologist from India who was in the program, and a Navy SEAL in the program, and both men. And I asked. We got around to talking about right action and how do you know what is right action? When what is right action comes out of skillful means. Skillful means comes out of practice. Your ability to know what action to take in any moment develops. You gain wisdom as your practice becomes more embedded and has greater longevity. So I said, okay, and it must have been back at the time right after 9/11, because I asked the group, I said, okay, what would you do if Osama bin Laden walked in the room right now? And Roger, the Navy SEAL, put up his hand. He said, I know what I'd do. Can't tell you what he said. He said, I shoot the motherfucker.
Shoot the motherfucker. God.
And I was like, okay, that's your dharma. You're a warrior, but I can't remember the name of the cardiologist. He said, well, if he came in staggering and bleeding, I'd drag him in and stop the bleeding. And so that was such a good example of dharma. What is your dharma? What is your duty? And my explanation of why some people are doing yoga, why some people have a spiritual practice, why some people don't. The first thing I always ask or point out in some of my workshops and retreats is, how many people in here are still throwing trash out of the windows of their car? People kind of go, oh, no, we're not throwing. I said, well, there's a lot of trash on the side of the roads. So what determines your level of consciousness about that, your level of awareness, how big is your circle of compassion? Does it include the whole earth? Do I have as much respect for your backyard as I do for my backyard? And so I think it's an evolutionary process that we're all on this, this cycle of evolution. And there are some people who are not quite as conscious that are behind us on the path. And there are people who are more conscious that are ahead of us on the path. And the people ahead of me on the path are probably looking back and going, you didn't just do that, did you? And I can look back and go, wow, how come some people are still doing this? And as my teacher used to say, that should to be on the lookout all the time for spiritual arrogance and not to develop compassion for people who might not be as aware of some aspects of our environment as I am, or as somebody more evolved than I am is. It's an evolutionary thing to me, and you have to be really careful when you're talking about this, because you don't want it to sound hierarchical. But we're all bringing a different set of karmas and some scars into this moment.
So if that's true, which I really resonate with what you just said, if we're all bringing a different set of karmas into this story of life, some people way on one end of the spectrum, some people on another end of the spectrum, is it really our job can the world be saved? Should we be riled up about stuff? Are we, I'm curious, what's the role of a spiritual teacher or a spiritual person, a person whose dharma in this life is to pursue enlightenment? If that's your dharma, should you be focused, for example, on, we've got an election coming up. It's like crazy town, right? It's, and one way of looking at it is you could say, well, my side is the side that would never throw something out the window, and the other side is the side of people that would throw their trash out the window. But I think you and I both know there's plenty of people on both sides who would do both things.
Exactly.
Right?
Good. So, thank you for saying that.
Yeah. So I guess I'm glad we agree on that. The question I have for you is, what's the dharma as a spiritual person when everyone is fighting as if the world is coming to an end?
Don't you just love this guy? That's such a good question. I think it used to be that if you wanted to say, if you wanted to save the world, you went out into the world, you carried signs, you picketed, you lobbied, you demonstrated, you were active in the world. If you were an activist, right, and that was your focus. If you wanted to know who you truly were, you retreated from the world and you went into a monastery. You sequestered yourself from the onslaught of day-to-day life and separated yourself from the world, right? So they were two very separate paths, whether you were out there as an activist or moving, trying to find out who you were and staying separate from the world. I don't think those two paths are separate anymore. I think they have become convergent, and that as we become more enlightened or more conscious or more evolved, that we have a responsibility to go out into the world and help uplift it, to help. I mean, we're talking about practicing mindfulness, right? What is mindfulness? It's learning to be in relationship with what is in this moment. Now, I might not like what is in this moment, but once it's in this moment, as the Buddhists say, there are causes and conditions that have created this moment right here. There isn't anything I can do about this moment. But if this moment is unjust or unfair or illegal, or is something that, it arouses so much compassion in me with something going. I mean, look at all the people demonstrating now.
Right. What do you think of that? Talking about Colombia?
Yeah, yeah.
Let's go for it.
Okay, hold on. Let me finish this thought. That I forget where I was going now.
Well, you were saying how, there used to be two different paths, and
Now
then become divergent or convergent on this idea that.
Oh, in this moment. Mindfulness, right?
Yes.
So I can't do anything about this moment once it's this moment. But the next moment I can begin to take action to change, to make change, bring about change. I can move toward, I can do the things that I do in my life. What activates me? Why do I show documentaries on the environment or on animals or on food? Why do I show What the Health or The Cove or Blackfish or Seaspiracy or A Place at the Table or all the
you feel very clear about the food, around food activism in a way, it seems like.
I really
the
do,
planet.
because I think it's so connected to the health of the planet,
Right.
the health of the individual. I think this whole search for the cause of cancer, I think that we have polluted our planet to the degree sufficiently with chemicals in the water, chemicals in the ocean, chemicals in the food, and the food we eat, the American diet.
What do you think of the people who are like, actually carnivore diet is super healthy? The Inuit is one example of like a really healthy centenarians that live just on seal blubber and fish or whatever. Does that break the thing mold for you at all, or do you think
Not really? I don't think I'm in a position to comment on what the Inuit should or should not be doing. I think but the problem is that we're on this trajectory of out of control population growth.
Okay.
When there was a manageable amount of Inuits or whomever, that relationship between the individual and nature, when the Native Americans were still here, that it was a consumption load that the earth could handle. We had enough natural resources that if some of the natural resources were taken out of the environment by a manageable number of people, that the balance was maintained. There wasn't plastic in the ocean. There wasn't, but now everywhere you look, it's even shampoo and laundry detergent and, with this synthetic fragrance chemicals, and it's mind-boggling.
It's interesting. I agree with you on one term, on one set, where it's like when I really think about all the shit that we flush down the toilets and the sinks,
and
how
drugs.
that, and all the freaking, all the drugs people are taking,
and then where does it
prescription
go?
drugs, right, and how that has to be healed some way. It's like water is magic, but it's not that. I mean, how magic can it be? I 100% agree that we are polluting the earth, and that is wrong, and I want to stop it.
What don't you agree on?
Yeah. This is the good stuff. I think I'm very skeptical of. I think overpopulation is a gut reaction that people have put into the narrative that actually isn't true. I think with proper technology, we could easily have a way bigger population.
Why would you want to, though?
More sentient humans having good experiences, I think,
there's
is a good thing.
Gazillion planets out there.
Yeah, and we could populate Mars.
No, I'm not talking about us populating Mars. I'm talking about other types of species that are already populating.
I wish they existed. I don't know if we know. I mean, we should talk about aliens. That'll be fun.
Okay,
wait, hold on. You gotta let me finish my point.
Wait. Okay,
you're gonna finish my point. I don't think that. I also think that population growth has been declining very precipitatively over the last 10 years, and most people don't understand how exponentials work. So if the US birth rate, which is now 1.9,
right,
so now we're going down, we're not going up.
US.
We're only but world population is also like all the first world countries, the places where you actually should want population to increase because it has resources, it has things. The population growth is going down way too fast. For example, like South Korea is going to have they're going to be extinct.
Way too fast for whom? We're all going to be extinct.
But what I'm saying is that entire peoples and cultures and communities are on the verge of extinction in some areas, and in other areas they're growing. And so I'm just saying that I don't think I actually think that there's enough resources on Earth that could be used in a sustainable way. I'm also, a big believer in transition to sustainable energy. I believe we can move off of fossil fuels and power the entire, we can recycle battery parts really well. That technology is just getting better and better and better. Everyone talks about the diamond mines and stuff. When you build a electric battery, it's terrible, but we're going to get to a point where we don't need to do any more mining, where we can recycle up to like 98% of the raw materials in cell phone batteries, computers, etc.
Right.
So I think that technology will enable way more population to exist. I don't think everyone's going to be able to eat, unlimited amounts of animal protein.
Unless they grow it in labs, which is starting.
Yeah, I think that's icky personally. I think we should have vertical farms and all kinds of and I do think some animal meat for some people, I think it's part of a natural, like you were talking, occasional, festival meals. There would be occasional, these centenarians were eating animals occasionally. And I think eating them every day in the amounts that we're eating them, with the toxicity that we're eating them in, is probably unhealthy.
Not probably.
It's very unnatural.
It's unnatural and unhealthy.
But anyway, so those are the things that what I disagreed with you on is maybe that I think there's an open debate. This would be fun to have at the festival. I want to have debates on these kind of ideas. I would love to get two experts, because neither you nor I are, right? We're armchair experts.
Yeah.
We're have a glass of wine and we'll tell you how much we know.
Have opinions.
Yes. But I think that that's an open debate about, is population growth really a problem or not? Because I think it gets into bad philosophical ideas, people not having children, people, go ahead.
I think that's a wonderful idea.
Not having children?
Oh, absolutely wonderful. I mean, it's a very basic, primitive, old OG sort of urge. But it's that urge to procreate, I think, has been overdeveloped in the human species. And now you're talking to somebody.
This is fun.
Just because, And I totally agree. I totally relate to what you're saying. And
Did you have any kids by the way?
No,
never.
I don't have
Okay.
any kids.
Yeah.
Thank God, so I can be on this soapbox without sounding like a hypocrite.
Well, I think honestly, it would give you more credit if you're like, I had kids and fuck them. Don't do it.
Well, there was just something on this morning on the Today Show, which I watched for about 5 minutes before I decided that's it. I'm done with television. One more drug ad comes on.
Oh my gosh. Oh,
On 65% of parents are burnt out on children. Just totally burnt out. But I mean, if you look across the board at everything, all the resources, any resource you can imagine, whether it's trees, it's $750 a square foot in the Berkshire County, Massachusetts, which is where we are, to build anything, to build an outhouse, right? The cost, there are no trees. I mean, now you can be looking out your window and say, well, I have trees. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
But we have raped the earth of building materials, whether it's tin or copper or steel or iron ore or gold or, and just because the technology could possibly clean up the ocean and recycle all the battery parts and do all the things you mentioned.
Well, we have to do that no matter what, right?
Does it mean that we should continue procreating
full steam ahead
and increasing the population? I also have read, that the population is going down here, and that I don't know what, I was pretty sure that the worldwide projection for the population in the next,
you can look that up,
20 years was going to be 10 billion. I think we might still hit 10 or 11 billion before it starts going down worldwide. I used to say 5, 6, 7 years ago, we need a plague, half facetiously, and then we got COVID, and
they're now saying this is just United Nations saying that the world's population is expected to increase by about 2 billion, so from 8 billion to 9.7, but it'll be by 2050.
20, yeah. So we're pushing 11 billion.
It will peak
at 11, right?
At 10.4 billion in 2080s. But those numbers, I'll just say, they used to say 11. The estimates keep
coming down.
That's
great. That's good.
But see, I'm worried about. Well,
would you want to feel crowded? I mean, here
we're
also
what's a healthy planetary population?
We're also of different generations, right? So when I was growing up, there were 2 billion people on this planet. I went snorkeling in the Caribbean to pristine, pure coral reefs. I mean, I have
coral reefs are coming back too.
I have
in Australia.
I just saw a whole piece on how they were, what do you call it? Bleaching out now this, that it's suddenly gotten worse again. Whatever.
Some places worse, some places better. But anyway, it used to be different. 2 billion, that's crazy.
And just traveling around the country and throughout Europe and Central and South America, teaching, and the changes I've noticed in places I go, everything is more crowded. You go anywhere and people go. Now, we all know that nothing, is permanent, I have T-shirts that say celebrate impermanence. I understand that things change and that we can't keep things the same. But this loss of natural resources, loss of space, loss of the purity and the pristine nature of some of our most sacred sites and national parks and beautiful places on this planet.
Right.
The more people that go to all these places, the more we kind of pollute them and abuse them.
It's interesting. I think because I've had and live a very privileged life, and I've been to Italy, for example, and and hiked the Dolomites, and I felt like I was by myself. And maybe I saw 1 or 2 people on the hike, and I feel like even in the Berkshires, I go hiking pretty much every day. I have a lot of solitude. I don't feel like it's overcrowded. I don't have a personal feeling of overcrowded. Now, cities is another question. When I go to a city, it definitely feels very different. Like when even New York City, 20 years ago is different than it is today in
Oh,
some
yeah.
parts of the city.
Yeah, no, true.
But I guess that part, I don't know. It's an interesting question. Do I wish there were less humans around? I don't know if I feel that way, but what I do feel is that, and I mean no disrespect. I don't mean this as a like I'm better than you thing. Being a parent has been an incredible journey for me.
I know.
That has been such a beautiful part of my spiritual growth as a human. And I don't think everyone has to do it, but I think we wouldn't want to, like, I think a lot of less people in America, at least from my generation and below, are having kids. And the reasons they're doing it are because the reason they're not doing it is not necessarily because they're afraid to have kids, but because of economic reasons.
Yeah.
And I also think there's a part of it that is people don't want to give up. Like when you have a kid, you have to give up a lot of your personal desires. Like, I'm sure you're friends with kids. Like you sublimate a lot of your personal desires. But as someone who practices spiritual, Buddhism, Taoism, all these things, I know that desires are endless. Do you know what I mean? So I think that if you accept the responsibility, it can be a beautiful thing. That all being said, yeah, I don't know. I think your question is valid though. Do we want more people? Like, is there a happy medium? And who should be having the kids? Like right now, the people that have the most
we don't
kids.
even want to get into that.
Oh, okay.
Whoever wants to have kids should have kids.
Okay, good. Okay, I agree with
I'm not
that.
going to be telling, and I am
But
not
don't you
trying
think
to
it's
be.
sad that more people who have the privilege and wealth don't have kids?
No, I don't think that's sad. I don't think that's sad at all.
Okay.
I think it's wonderful to have kids if you want to have them.
Yeah.
I do have some attitudes about some of the celebrities that want to have 5 and 6 and 8 and 10 kids.
They
And
get the money.
Nick Cannon brags about having 18 kids, and Mick Jagger has 18 kids.
Mick Jagger has 18 kids.
I think it's selfish and disrespectful to the planet, and this is super controversial.
Say it.
I mean, well, what I just did say it. I just think
the planet is more important than individuals on the planet.
I don't think the planet can afford to I always feel if I have an electric toothbrush, then everybody should have the right to have an electric toothbrush. However, if everybody on the planet had an electric toothbrush, think about how many resources it would take to make that possible, or think of anything. I just use electric toothbrush as an example. But if someone chooses to have more than 1 or 2 or children, I think you're not tuned in to what the needs of the planet are right now. And I'm not talking about the children that are all. No, it doesn't.
There's a lot of people that have 5 kids and they run a farm and they're like,
that is back in the 1800s.
I'm saying still today first of all, not many people are having 5 kids.
Thank goodness.
I think
and I'm not saying that if you have 5 kids, you've done something wrong.
Okay.
Because
I thought that's what you were saying.
No, not at all. I'm talking about this moment going forward.
Right now.
Not if this moment going backwards.
I know someone that has a lot of kids.
And they're here and we accept them and we're grateful.
But so from this podcast onwards, no one should have 5 kids. You're breaking
from whatever moment you're in. Whatever moment, when I'm talking to young women, I'm saying, look, be mindful. Be mindful of what the needs of the planet are.
But let me ask you
what is the greater good here? Because those kids, especially if they have money, are going to use more resources. It's not limited. If you live on some remote farm in the middle of somewhere, you're still on the internet. You can still order stuff from Amazon, and you're still using resources to the same degree as everybody else.
So let me ask you this, because I think what you're saying, it's not the planet you're necessarily worried about, because the planet, if we ruin the planet, the planet's
still here.
Planet can become uninhabitable. What you're worried about is for the people who are here and maximizing the quality of life for the humans that are here
Thank
and
you.
their future descendants.
That's
what you're
very
trying
well
to say.
said. That's good. That's right.
So I guess then you'd be open to different arguments about what it would look like to maximize that quality of life.
I'm open to everything, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, I try to be open to everything. You know, once you get closed down, you're limiting your education. You're limiting your personal spiritual growth, I think.
I think that's a really good question to dig into, which for experts is like, how would we maximize well-being for conscious creatures on this planet?
Write that down.
I got it. We recorded it. We're good.
How do you maximize, say that again?
Well-being for conscious creatures on the planet.
That's terrific.
Let's switch it up.
All right.
Who's the greatest living hatha yogi you've ever met?
Oh, wow. Norman Allen.
I have no idea.
He's not alive anymore. Does he have
That's
to
fine.
be alive
No.
now?
We can do. Let's do some Norman Allen and tell us about Norman, and then let's do someone.
Norman was
alive.
my teacher, my Ashtanga asana teacher that I met in 1979 in New York City. That taught me the Ashtanga
primary,
he
studied with
Patabi Joyce. Yeah.
What was so special about him?
He was like watching an Olympic gymnast workout. He was a crazy dude, but he was dedicated he was a dedicated yogi. He gave me my first copy of the Yoga Sutra. Up until that point, I had started doing meditation in 1971 in California with my teacher, Chitrabhanu, and I'd studied with Choyam Trungpa Rinpoche in San Francisco. And so I had Buddhist and Jain meditation techniques. And then I started doing asana with Yogi Bhajan in LA in 1971. But I never made the connection between asana and meditation.
So, okay, let me rephrase my question. Who is the greatest spiritual teacher that you've had personal experience with, where you felt that they were emanating consciousness or light or enlightenment, or they were able to help enlighten you and others? You know, who's the teacher that stands out for you the most?
Probably Monishri Chitrabhanu, my teacher.
And what was it about them? And who he was, a man, a woman? I'm sorry.
Man, a Jain monk. Came from India in 1971 to this country. Worked with Mahatma Gandhi in India on the revolution before India became a independent country.
What was it about his presence or what he did that was special that you felt? Can you maybe remember a moment, a story that's coming to mind?
I went to lectures with him in New York City at the Jain Meditation Center. He and his wife became good friends of mine. I took them to California. We did a whole tour of the West Coast and introduced him to a lot of the teachers on the West Coast at the time. We met Swami Satchidananda, Yogi Bhajan, Dr. Mishra, who changed his name to, I don't know what his name became. He had a center in San Francisco. It was something about his energy. I can't really describe what made him seem, except that it turned my life around. You know, that I was
being in his presence, listening to him talk. How did it change
all
you?
Of a sudden, the first lecture I went to was in New York City in some funky little yoga center on the west side of New York. And this is back in the 70s. It was on West 79th Street, and it was a dark little, classroom. And I remember my friend Josh Reynolds had called me. I was in LA, and he was saying, "You got to come meet this Indian teacher." I said, "Josh, I'm in California. I've met so many Indian teachers. I'm up to here with Indian teachers." I hadn't gone to India yet. I went to India in 74 with Chitrabhanu and spent 4 or 5 months there, studying with the Jain monks and nuns and traveling. But So I finally flew back to New York, was sitting on the floor in full lotus with my eyes closed before he came into the room. And I just sat there. He came into the room, started speaking. I never opened my eyes. And I didn't open my eyes until he was done lecturing. And he talked, my father was dying at the time. And he talked about death and life and rebirth and karma. And all of a sudden, just a number of things just clicked for me, like karma. Oh, yeah, I get it. And knowing that, and my father died shortly after that. And so it was understanding that, when he died, that wasn't it, that it wasn't the end. He was still present. And so when I opened my eyes after the lecture to look at him, he was looking at me, and I felt like someone had just sawed out this breastbone, and I had this heart center connection with him, and that was it.
That's like Diksha.
Yeah, exactly.
So he became your guru
Exactly.
after that. It was wow. Yeah, that's beautiful. Okay, lightning round.
More question. I'll make it quick.
Okay, we'll go lightning. These got to be quick ones. It's the biggest mistake you ever made in life. Is it tahini, raspberry, jalapeno on rye, or something else?
Biggest mistake. I have this weird attitude that nothing's a mistake. I mean,
Good answer.
So many, my mom died when I was 15. My dad died when I was 32. I moved from New York to California. I moved from California to Colorado. I moved from Colorado back to the East Coast. I mean, I've gone through some I was in an abusive marriage for 24 years. And I started therapy because I thought I wanted to I started therapy. My therapist said to me, this was back in the probably late 80s. And he said, why do you want to do therapy? I said, I want to get out of my marriage without getting killed, and I want to stop smoking pot. He said, well, I don't care if you smoke pot or not. I said, yeah, well, I do, and I can't stop. Wow. And so 6 months later, I just I stopped smoking pot.
Huh.
And my marriage eventually ended because my husband died. I was always afraid to just divorce him because I wasn't quite sure how that would go. But I don't think do I think getting married was a mistake? Do I think moving was a mistake? No, because everything that I love where I am right here, right now.
Yeah, that's what Todd Norian said something on the podcast that was really awesome. He said, as long as you are able to be present with the present, then you can look back on your past as a gift, whatever it was.
Everything is everything is the Dharma.
Okay, good answer.
Todd's a sweetheart. We swim together. We both are on the same.
Really?
Yeah, we're on the same swim team.
Okay. Are yogis? You talked about practice and non-attachment a lot from the Yoga Sutras, right? That yoga is both a practice and the learning of non-attachment.
Correct.
Are yogis today too focused?
Abhyasa and
Vairagya.
Vairagya.
Not Viagra.
But not Viagra. And I always have to stop for a second before I say that. Good. Are yogis today
too focused on social justice or not enough?
No, it's just where they are. It's this evolutionary experience. Where you are depends on everything that is arising in your life, my life, is conditioned phenomena. It's been determined by that which has preceded, by what I did yesterday and last week and 10,000 lifetimes ago. And now I am creating this moment by the samskaras, the impressions that I have pounded into my energy fields over the many, many lifetimes. And so I think whatever is your passion is, social justice is important, right? God bless them. Yeah. Get out there and fight for. Yeah, go ahead. We were going to talk about Israel and Palestine. Thank God we've avoided that.
We don't have to. We don't have enough time. All right, better breakfast: avocado on sourdough or tahini raspberry jalapeno on rye?
Oh my God, that's an impossible choice. I had avocado on sourdough this morning. Funny you should mention that. Toast, my favorite food in the whole world. Toast.
Okay, COVID retrospective with 2020 vision. What would you have done differently?
Nothing.
Okay,
I was
personally, not like for the government. And all
no
that.
fine, perfect. I had a great. I did.
You loved COVID. You had a good
I
time.
didn't love it. It was well, I was thinking, boy, here comes that
How many jabs did you get?
3.
3, and then you're kind of done.
I
Are you
think
done?
so. Yeah, I don't know. I keep saying I should get this. I should get shingles. I should get pneumonia. I'm like, I don't think I want any of those.
Okay. What's one teaching methodology in yoga you used to teach but now you don't, and why?
This is the way it is. This is what it says on the stone tablets. And by God, if this is the first posture in Ashtanga, this is what we're going to do. Now I'm a little more flexible, a little more pliable, a little more adaptable, make it more accessible to whomever happens to be. What do you think?
Oh man, I have so many. I think my biggest one is trying to doing pranayams in the middle of class more, like stopping more,
Oh,
and like letting people feel meditation more when they're practicing, as
oh,
opposed to just doing it in the beginning and the end.
yeah.
I
Don't
like
do
to
that anymore.
I like to bring. I don't just now. I bring it throughout the whole class.
Oh, you do?
Yeah, yeah. I think that in the middle of an asana class, your energy is really flowing, and if you do pranayama at that moment, it's very palpable, and it can refocus the mind even deeper before shavasana.
They are, although they're not distinctly separate limbs, one flows into the next. But as you know, in the Ashtanga asana, tradition, not Ashtanga 8-limb path, but Ashtanga referring to the asana practice,
Yeah,
it's combined with Ujjayi breathing. So you've
right.
got the two of those going. The objective is to get the heat up, use the locks, get the heat up, sweat, cleanse, then done. Pranayama is a separate
I have a
practice.
very actually question about that. Ujjayi breathing is the goal of when you're mastering Ashtanga, primary series, this type of Ashtanga, is the idea that your Ujjayi breathing would be so quiet that only you could hear
No,
it?
that's baloney.
Or it's loud.
That's a recent development that was
Well,
put in place.
I like that.
By you can like it all you
I don't-
like. That's
yeah,
fine.
Yeah,
But
that's not what he was teaching.
That's not
Patabi
what
Joyce
was
teaching.
taught. What Norman taught, not what Patabi Joyce taught. I'm old school Ashtanga. It was
So loud Ujjayi.
It wasn't straining, but it was audible. Now the descendants have said, oh, you shouldn't hear the breath, which is what Iyengar says.
Interesting.
Right?
Yeah.
So I think the objective was in the beginning, make it strong because it creates heat. And you're trying to turn on the sweating mechanism,
right,
and keep it turned on until the practice is over.
I think eventually it would refine enough that you could do it so quick.
I
softly.
agree.
Okay, let's 2 more, and then I promise we're done. Who over all those years is your yoga crush that it just never worked out with?
Sam Harris.
Sam Harris. Which Sam Harris? The philosopher?
Yes.
So the atheist philosopher?
Yes.
Oh, interesting. Have you met him?
No, I would love to meet him.
I have met him one time.
You met him?
Oh, it's just a really weird story.
Do you know Awake?
I met him once at a book.
And he's one of the most spiritual people I know.
Interesting.
And a Buddhist meditator. And so to just refer to him as an atheist is not.
Oh yeah, no,
he doesn't believe in God as the way the Abrahamic traditions do, that God is out there somewhere and I'm here and that's God out there.
You should get on. We should connect you to Sam Harris.
Oh my God, that'd be so wonderful.
I'll tell you, why I met Sam Harris. He doesn't know he met me. I met him like at a book signing event. He signed a book for me. But
Awake?
It was what was the book?
What was the one before?
The one about waking up, not awake.
Waking up. Sorry, that's it. Yeah.
I went to his talk at an event, And I was really into his content at the time. So I'd been listening to him all the time. And when you listen to someone's podcast over and over and over again, and then you meet them in person, a weird things happen in your nervous system. I'd never experienced this before because, I worked at Kripalu. I met every famous yoga teacher. I
Yep.
met Deepak Chopra, Marianne Williamson, all these people. And I was never like starstruck in my life. And I used to, when I was a kid, I worked with Jeffrey Ross, who's a comedian, and at MTV, I worked with Carson Daly when I was 19, like big people, and I was never starstruck in my life. But my friend told me that there's a scientific reason for this. I had been listening to so much Sam Harris at that time in my life, and then to meet him in person. And I had this whole thing I planned to say, and I basically was like, sign my book, please.
That's just where I would be. I listen to him all the time. I
don't listen to him that much anymore, just to let you know. That's not for not any reason except that my interests always keep changing.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's.
I just looked at a bio or not even a bio, but a course description on that was written that I wrote up for a workshop I'm doing at Greenhouse Yoga, as a matter of fact, in the middle of May in Great Barrington, Massachusetts. And I'm going, God, did I write that? That sounds really familiar. And I went, Jesus, I just read that 3 weeks ago, or heard it or read it in a Sam Harris podcast. And I just came back out, and I went, what a great description of meditation that is. And I went, oh, Jesus, it's like Sam Harris, almost word for word.
Okay, there's a last question.
Okay.
Ready? What is the best and the worst part of aging, or being over 80? Let's say that, being an octogenarian.
I think I all the accumulated experience, and maybe you could call it accumulating some wisdom, but the accumulated experience and the opportunity to talk to younger people, and most of the people I hang out with are younger than I am, because I'm still hiking and swimming, and I going out with my dogs and paddleboarding, and I'm no more pickleball.
No more pickleball.
No more pickleball. But and the worst thing, well, I don't know if it's I have hip replacements, and I have after a couple, things start to, I just went and had I'm just getting a little out of breath hiking uphill. What's going on here? So I just had an evaluation this morning, right before I came here, with a vascular surgeon, and she measured my pulse and my legs and my throat, my chest, and measured blood flow and oxygen content. She said, you don't have peripheral artery disease. Everything's fine. You've got excellent pulse, excellent blood flow. And I was like, yes, but things are going to start to break down. And you wonder, one of the big questions I ask myself, I'm out hiking, I look around at the trees, and I go, what is it going to be like not to be here?
What comes to you when you say that?
I don't know. What is it going to be like? How is the world going to manage? I'm not going to be.
How are we going to survive without you?
How can I? What's it going to be like not to be waking up in the morning and making tea and meditating and doing my practice and talking with my friends and making black bean soup? And
have you made peace with that thought, that idea?
I haven't not made peace with it. I'm just kind of
you're kind of sitting in that curiosity.
Yeah, but the interesting thing is that you always think there's more time. I have a little sign on in my house that I printed out, and it says, meditate now lest you regret it later. Buddha.
I feel like you have the perfect attitude, because accepting death is kind of like there's something missing there. But to just have the attitude of curiosity, it's like the attitude of a child, it's like the right attitude. You're neither averse to it, nor are you drawing it towards you.
I am rehearsing death, and my students go, "Oh my God!" And so I go,
You're
"No,
rehearsing it?
yeah, well, that's Buddhist practice to begin,
Yeah,
you know,
visualizing
like
yourself
that.
dying.
I wonder who wants that. I'm going to put Andrew. Would you like that after I die? I'm going to put your name on the back of that, and then you start getting rid of stuff. And because I don't have children, I don't have parents, I don't have brothers and sisters. I don't want to leave a big mess for all my friends to have to deal with.
Huh.
So you start offloading little by little.
Hmm.
And the Taoists do that too, you know. So,
Yep.
but you don't have to offload yet. You're young.
I have time. I look forward. I always said to my wife, I've said this to her since before we were married, that one of my dreams, one of my bucket list things is like when the kids are old enough, and then I want to like go be in a cave. Like I want to give up
Oh
everything.
God.
She's like, that's fine.
She'll be sick of you by then anyway.
She's like already
You're
like
a perfect dad. You are a perfect
oh,
dad.
I
My
don't know
dad
that.
was a scientist and wonderful, brilliant chemist, and it was, you know, it's interesting. We pick our parents, you know, dharmically and karmically, and is that based on what has preceded? You know, we are born into the parents that we need to be born to. Now, people are going to say, well, what about people that are born into this situation? And what about people? I'm going. I'm not going to comment on that. You know,
Why not? Why not say like suffering for some people are, I mean, some people have to suffer as part of their, like we learn not just through suffering. You know, there are plenty of people that had childhoods of wealth and happiness and they're not happy. And then there's people that went through terrible traumas and they come out as they are able to, you know, we can't say, you know, I don't know. I don't personally know whether I believe that we chose it or not, except that I think everything has a cause.
Exactly.
And I don't know. I believe we're all one consciousness, just experiencing reality through different bodies and
Then
stuff.
you just said it perfectly. You sound like Sam Harris.
Oh, really? Okay.
No, I mean, if one of us is hungry, and once you have that realization, if one of us is hungry, we're all hungry. And once you really, not intellectually understand that, but experientially go through it. For me, it was 1976 on 12 peyote buttons. And
this podcast is going to go forever.
I know we got
12 peyote buttons.
Yeah, that's for the next.
Let's say that one question I didn't ask was about your deepest samadhi experience.
12 peyote buttons.
12 peyote
1976 at Joshua Tree National Forest in California.
And
14 hours.
What happened? Where did you go?
I did beyond words. Just pure light, pure connection, pure boundlessness.
And did you ever experience that again through yoga or meditation?
I've been to, you know, you kind of bump up against the edges of it, but no, I've been trying to get back there for 76. What's this? 26? That'd be 30, 50 years ago.
Yeah, you've been trying to get back there for 50 years?
Yeah, pretty much.
Maybe that's how you can go out. On 12 buttons.
I haven't done mushrooms yet. That might be it. I'll save that for, yeah.
We can chat after. I'm just kidding. Oh, shit. It's all recorded.
You can always edit. We can always end it a little early. This has been fabulous.
All right, this has been fun.
We could sit and talk forever.
We could. It's really fun. I think we're going to end it here.
Okay.
I really appreciate it. Beryl Bender, thank you for sharing your dregs of wisdom with us.
Andrew Tanner, you are the best. I'll do a podcast with you any day of the week.
All right. My pleasure. We'll do it again. Cheers. Peace. Hey, if you like that, hit like and subscribe. Join us for the next Dregs.